Do the gods stick with the land they come on? Questions, things mulling about. When it comes to deities, working with multiple pantheons, all of these sorts of things, when you kind of get into paganism, start researching old things, there are so many questions, especially as you are researching into what gods reach out to you, what gods are like connected to you and your culture and your history. But also, I think in so many ways we then overlook the land and what does that association have with it. And I think there are some things to put up for consideration when we think of the earth as a whole, the cultures and things that span upon it, the spirits and things that are tied in with that, and how those could evolve and push and flux. So anyway, I'm just kind of posing these questions. As always, a grain of freaking salt with any of these videos. Just debates and stuff. My worldview ain't gonna be your worldview. That's fine, but we do be respectful. First things first, when it comes to do the gods have a connection with the land, I think there is definitely a yes and or but with that statement, right? Like, it makes sense that there would be certain entities tied to a certain place in some respects because of there's so much power that people put into their environment. And so the idea of something coming into being and then kind of focusing on one place, especially since so many of the gods are tied in with an element or weather or a time of year, Persephone, just to name one. It kind of seems like, of course they're tied with the land in some way. Of course there is something going on here, especially since the land and the seasons and the elements that are most focused upon are so different because there are so many different places in land. And so I do think there's a level too then that comes with the idea of respecting this land's spirits and deities in a way. But here comes that but. One of the things that kind of always pushes on me a bit is the idea of, but humans, while somewhat stationary, also have been very nomadic, and aren't we also of the land? I think it becomes problematic to suggest that wherever land you land on, whether of your own volition or not, because people be awful, should you then switch gods? Is your god not following with you, and you should be entirely indebted to the land and the place and the environment and the culture of the place and disregard entirely what came before or what your ancestors came before? And I don't know how I feel about that, but I also too think that kind of in a weird way disconnects us from the land entirely. There is something to be said, I think, my blood, my people, there is a level of, well, I came of this part of land, and so even down my line in my blood, wouldn't part of it also then come with me? So it's like a weird mix, right? So you definitely want to be respectful of the lands you are on and those spirits and those deities, while also, I think, acknowledging in a sense too that maybe it's not mine to worship though, or maybe you won't feel as much of a connection with that land, or there's something vibing, there's something going on. I felt this multiple different times, and I find these connections very interesting. I have had the wonderful privilege of being able to travel a bunch, mixed in because my father was a pilot before he retired, and so we got to basically have free-ish flights as I was a kid growing up to many different places, and basically just if there's open seat on the flight, I got to go somewhere. So that meant that our family vacations turned into pack everything into a suitcase, and we would show up to the airport and we would see what is available. And we also took very weird vacations. Like, I always went to vacation never in the summertime. It was always like weirdly September, October, or like sometime after the spring breaks, those weird 2 weeks when like no other schools are having spring breaks. That's when we went because no one else was traveling. Good stuff. And so I had got to actually go back to the places that the white people's parts of me came from. Lots of Italian. I got to explore a lot of different places in Italy, and I do have to say there is a level of a certain familiarity. I think it's probably too a level of hearing the Italian music that was played in my grandparents' household, hearing it that reflected in language being spoken around. There is a connection there. There is a connection of, oh, some of the foods that I'm so used to that have kind of been a little bit changed and adapted, I can now experience in the quote-unquote motherland. There's a feeling there, right? Like a little of, oh yeah, I'm of this place. And I think very similarly too, that came from, specifically for me, when I was able to travel to parts of Ireland and Scotland, and I could tell there was also a sense of that. It was picking up on a certain cozy aspect of culture that clearly has somehow been passed-ish down through my mother's side, even though it's so freaking far removed, way more removed than my father's, within my heritage. Like there is still a pieces of culture that has been passed down, and I also think a comfort that comes from that land and that place. There is a connectivity there. And then I've traveled to other places. Japan was definitely one. I tried to climb Mount Fuji, and it did not end well. Ended with me injured and puddling on the side of a mountain during a typhoon. It was not a fun time overall. But there was definitely, beyond that, I felt a level of just like, you are definitely visiting, and you are not welcome to stay here very long term. Also too, when I've had the wonderful opportunity to travel down to Mexico. I remember going down there a few years back and attempting to pull some tarot and meditate and get into a little bit of let's open me up to the vibes and stuff going on, and felt a little bit of not my place, not my peoples, not my deities, not my God. There was things poking in, looking, and I'm like, I am not used to this, so we're going to be respectful. I just felt something that was a bit off, a bit foreign, and not in that way super connected. A kitty! Are you connected to the land? You're of the land. What do you think? You've traveled around? Not to across any oceans, but definitely across the country. You wanna settle in? You wanna get down? Pick one. Down. That also then poses the question, as an American and as someone who comes from colonizers, the very land I was born on though is not of me, right? Like when I was talking about there was something that was like born in blood and came up through the ancestors. It is a question of, well, this one isn't necessarily of my ancestors. That connectivity that I feel with certain parts of Europe, Italy, or within Scotland or Ireland, or where my DNA says I originated from, is not up here. Not a drop, not a little bit of it. But there is still a level of certain comforts and understandings, and I think that could possibly just come from time and being here since birth. I do wonder a level of, maybe without even trying, when someone is born in a place, there is a connectivity there, that energy was expanded upon, that life came into being here. So you naturally have a more connection to the place where you actually grew up with, and you maybe become familiar with the types of energies and the spirits and the deities that are lingering about if they are tied to this place. But along with that, there comes a connectivity, but also I think a odd shallowness. It does very much feel in so many ways like I was searching, and I wonder if so many other people feel this too, when this is not my home, this is not my land, this is not my place, and I felt very much an urge to connect with where I was. Being connected to the land itself was important for me, and I was kind of constantly in search of that. When I was traveling around, I've lived in Chicago, California, Arizona, now Portland, and when I came here there was a sense of, oh, there is a connection here and a vibe, a situation, a bit of energies that I really like. There's something that I'm like settling into. It seems to connect well. Boo! Oh, come here. Come here. Woo! Part of it was because I then approached the land itself and the entities, spirits, what have you, whatever was abound, with a level of respect and ask, may I stay here? May I live, grow here? Could we form a bond and do some things? I also think too, I feel more of a grounding the more involved I have gotten here. Not just because I connect specifically with the city and whatever else, and it's because along with this land, I have, over the times I've lived here, now started to connect with the people who should own this land, the native tribes of this area. I have tried to look into the full histories of the place. I've tried to get more connected with my local community by walking around, supporting local businesses, looking into the histories and like really understanding the full context of a place. Like with so many of the things, as I kind of mentioned in my New Age video, just like with witchcraft, it kind of pushes you to understand the complexities of things, because there's so many different levels of spells and herbs and so much to learn, right? And when you start looking at the complexities, I think, of one thing, I think you start looking at the complexities of another place. So even if my gods don't come from this land and this place, I can still placate, make nice, get along with the entities and stuff of this land in a very respectful way, as long as I'm looking into the full context. And I can feel that connection becoming deeper and deeper and deeper. To the point of, if you caught it, my poetry video that I put out a little earlier this month was the idea of my bones will go here. And it was very much of, I made a spell and an offering to this land, saying that if you embolden me and allow me to build a life on you, very much, please take this flesh and do with it what you will. It will be fed to you. My burial will go here in a non-destructive manner to this land. But then kind of coming back to the gods then of our culture and our thing, I think there is a level too of gods can follow you to an extent. I think they are viscerally tied with the land in so many ways, but we are also of the land, and if we can move, they can move. And there's just so many different like elements and stuff to that, because I think like if you're thinking of gods being totally tied to the land and they don't affect anything over here, I mean, I think there is a level of a communical thing, right? Like Persephone coming in and checking on me, even though like her maybe area is more over in the Mediterranean, doesn't mean that she has no power here and no connection over here, because clearly I'm over here. But probably she's superseding some powers to the gods that actually rule over this land. There could be a level of interference that is happening. Maybe if I'm ever working any sort of spell or thing that could maybe directly conflict with any person who is connected with the gods actually from this land, you know, from the days. How does that change? How does that affect my magic and stuff overall? That could definitely affect some things, right? And I wonder too, if is there a level of power levels? This also then just feeds into a little bit of the concept that deities gain their power by who worships them and how many people worship to them and to what level of devotion. Because I wondered then about the societies that have come up and gone out, aka civilizations that have entirely fallen. Are the ancient Greek gods coming into more power now because we have remembered them and are bringing them about more and more people are looking into that side of paganism? Same thing with the ancient Egyptian gods. But there are gods that maybe aren't as popular or who have entirely been forgotten, who have been erased. I think that's one of the most tragic things in so many ways. We try to look back constantly at myths and stories and written accounts of what we do have, but so much knowledge of back then is missing. And there was huge more variety between even places that we would consider homogenous now, because people couldn't travel that far. Like, we didn't have the trains and the cars and the planes to be able to connect all these things. And so like this one tribe of people could have had a certain god that then when it merged with this tribe, you know, they became one god, or maybe one was entirely kicked out and forgotten entirely. What about those gods? Are they still tied with their land? Are they still sitting there, maybe asleep, and haven't had because they're just so low on energy because no one is really devoted to them or exchanging stuff? Or are they entirely not affected by us at all, and we think very highly of ourselves that they're gaining power from us? I don't know, I think it's a very interesting thing to slowly look into and unpack, but I do think there for sure is a level of connectivityness with the gods and a specific place, but there are so many other factors that then weave into that and make it way more complex than it is. So let me know in the comments down below, what do you guys think about a god or deity's pantheon, maybe even in general, be connected to a specific place? Do you think they have more power in that place? Does it really matter? Is it all comes from us? Not as much? All of that in the comments down below. But anyway, that was today's video. Very much a talking through, questioning stuff. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.